Welcome to a Shot in the Arm podcast. I'm Ben Plumley, and this is a podcast about innovation and equity in global health. Well, our topic today could not be more important as it relates to innovation and equity. COVID-19 pandemic certainly put pay to the misapprehension that many of us in the global health community had that perhaps over the last 30 years we'd made progress to deal with innovation and to get it to the people who needed it. But of course, with COVID, we had the mRNA vaccine innovation, and then we had vaccine nationalism, vaccine populism that prevented us from getting the vaccines to the people who needed them. But as we come out of the week of UN negotiations in New York, it's important not to lose hope, not to lose sight of the end goal. And my guest today is someone who can really enthuse and infuse the sense of optimism that we need, that we can do this, we can break this Gordian knot. And she is none other than the CEO of Afrigen, Africa's one and only mRNA vaccine manufacturer and R&D company, Dr. Petro Terblanche. Petro, welcome to a Shot in the Arm podcast.
Ben, thank you, and proudly African biotech.
Proudly African biotech, yes, absolutely. Now, we often do interviews with and conversations with folks from the private sector biomedical community. And of course, you are not sponsoring this, so everything is said in that context. But I always kick off with asking people to describe the company from a private sector perspective with, how are you going to sustain this? How are you going to make money out of this?
So we're a very unusual biotech company. We were founded by a development finance corporation and a non-for-profit. And on the African continent, where there's no VC money available, risk capital for biotechs to have startup time, it's long lead times, 5 to 7 years, sometimes 10 years. Moderna, BioNTech's life, 20 years before they really pivot. We had to be smart. So it's interesting that Afrigen was founded with a goal to localize the manufacturing of a TB vaccine for the African continent. So ingrained in our fabric and in our architecture is the need to create capacity and capabilities for manufacturing of products essential for the health needs of the continent. So we very much have an Africa focus. But we have to be sustainable, and we have to be commercially sustainable. We are privileged that we had shareholders that understood the timelines. The IDC in South Africa has a development focus and understood how important it is to build the capacity and the capability before we can really earn revenue. So today, Afrigen is pre-revenue earning, and we have the opportunity to utilize non-dilutive funding for a purpose which is non-for-profit. And this is what the mRNA Technology Transfer Program, with the vision of the World Health Organization and enabled by the Biomedicine Patent Pool, has given to us. It has given us the opportunity to access risk capital to build a capability. And commercially, where will we be? We will have products, we will innovate, we will take products to market, and we will have partnerships that can leverage the innovation that we do at Afrigen.
Now, can I press you on a couple of things that you've said? Again, from the global health community, we think of manufacturers, maybe one or two in South Africa, but a lot in India, as taking the technology from so-called innovator companies in the global north and then replicating it and being able to produce product more cheaply. But you're actually doing more than that, aren't you? Because you are actually researching into, you mentioned TB, but also HIV. We'll come on to the COVID and mRNA in a moment, but also Rift Valley virus. So it's not just about capacity to manufacture. its sort of leadership in identifying the health priorities of the continent, right?
We're pioneering. The ingrained in the company's fabric and culture is to make new things. I remember when I joined Afrigen in a few years back. One of the things that intrigued me, because I came from corporate, where we made something out of something, and going into a biotech startup with a 3-year budget, which is not even enough to set up a lab properly.
3-year budget.
I had the reason why it intrigued me is I've never made something out of nothing. And the team with me, we made something out of nothing. So we are a pioneering company. We believe that Africa can have innovation. We believe that the assets for innovative new products can be captured and the value can be captured on the continent. Our vision is much broader than having essential new products onto the African continent. We want to take some of those to the rest of the world. And that's what drives this little company. We're nimble, we are innovative, we question, we experiment, we build platforms, and we have a strategy around platforms that is multi-product. But if you visit us, we're a boutique. We're a small company with flexibility, but deep innovation.
Now, there's that sort of leads us on to the other side of Afrigen, which, as you probably are aware, the global health community sees you a bit as a poster child of what could be done. And Afrigen could be viewed as, more of a social movement for change than a traditional private sector entity, although those boundaries continue to get blurred, which is a good thing. And so it's interesting that, taking you as an example, you don't have a background in pharmaceutical or vaccine manufacturing. You've had quite an extraordinary career and life. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done and how you got to this point?
Before I do that, I think what drives Afrigen is, can we do good before we do well? Okay. In financial terms, you want to do well and then do good. We want to do good. So where have I come from? I've changed my domains of work often. I'm a scientist by training, so I understand the soul of the scientist. I have not practiced science in the last 20 years. I've been in positions of leadership and strategy. But I've worked in the nuclear industry, I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry, I've worked in food technology. I sat this week and I listened to some of the discussions around post-harvest losses, a world that's hungry. And we lose so much of what we produce post-harvest. And it took me back to 1994 when I worked in that space. So I come into a new field and I go back to school. I learn and I drive, and then once it's stable and there's something that I can't add value to anymore, I move on. Vaccines, this is the first time that I've worked in vaccines. I've migrated away from it. It's complex, and it's but the COVID pandemic just gave us again that new shot in the arm.
Yeah.
Why vaccines are so important.
Well, it changed everything in a way. Another aspect of you and your life that I think is interesting, you mentioned 1994, and looking back at your career, you were involved in looking at how air pollution was affecting, populations particularly around your home outside of Pretoria in Gauteng province in South Africa. And I remember reading some of the comments you made at the time at how particularly kids and young people in the townships in the area were really suffering incredibly because of air pollution. And where I want to come at you in terms of the question is, you clearly represent, a post-apartheid rainbow nation, South Africa. But you also have roots in you're from the veldt, you are a wonderful Afrikaans name, Terblanche. Brits is the city that was the home of the National Party. So your journey to the Rainbow Nation, can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very Afrikaans community, very conservative politically. But I have an extraordinary parents. My dad is no longer alive, but my dad was a visionary. And I remember how many times he said that we must never become part of the legacy of idealism. He was, of course, very Afrikaans, and he was a farmer. I grew up on a farm, close to the earth and close to animals, with a mother that didn't work. She cared for her children. She was a housewife. But my father was very, very wise, and from a very early stage, we had the evening debates around the kitchen table. And he talked about abortion, he talked about politics, he talked about the Broederbond in South Africa. He talked about how we make decisions, what changes the world, evolution, and always taught us to look at the other side. And I think even today, when I look at something, I always say, but what is the other side? So he gave us a very broad perspective. And I want to tell you something. When I went to school the first time, I was 5 years old. You know, the morning you go to school to be enrolled, your first day, you drive yourself to school. You sit behind the steering wheel. Oh, no, please don't tell the
This goes, this is just between us. You know?
This is between us. And we didn't I realized that only when I was much older, it was an empowerment. You drive yourself to school. You know, farm children drive tractors when they're 5 years old. You hold the steering wheel, and on the dirt road to the school, which is 5 kilometers, you drive to school. We'll never forget that, because that was, you take control of your own environment. You are going to school. Those things are very precious. So, yeah, farm girl. And then I went to university. I was 17 when I went to the big city. We had an incredibly protective life on a farm, you know. And our biggest friends are the farm workers. The children of the farm workers, they were my sisters and my brothers. Then I went to university, and I will never forget it. I was with a friend at a Wimpy, you know, one of the Wimpies, in Sunny Park. I was 17 years old, turning 18. And the Wimpy refused an Indian couple to sit down to have coffee. And I think for the first time, and I remember it even today, years later, I thought, what is this? This is wrong. And I'm a child of South Africa. I'm a child of Africa. I had so many opportunities in my life to work overseas. I've been privileged that I could do a postdoc at Harvard University. I could have stayed there and continue working with air pollution epidemiology, but I came back. I stood in 1994 in the queues to vote, the first democratic election in South Africa, and I was 6 months pregnant. And it was so much uncertainty. What will happen? Will we be fine? People were stocking up food. I never doubted that we will be fine. And I'm still there, and I come back, I travel and I come back to South Africa, and I taste and I smell the country. So I'm a patriot. I love the country. I love the people of Africa, and I will continue to do whatever I can to contribute to what that destiny is.
And so let's talk about that contribution as it relates to the mRNA platform and the technology that can be used to ensure that Africa is sort of never at the back of the queue again when we face the next pandemic or crisis, which we inevitably will. You've made partnerships a central theme in driving Afrigen's agenda. You spoke at the top about the partnership with the Medicines Patent Pool and WHO. You got appointed, Afrigen got appointed as the WHO mRNA hub in Africa. And then you've been busy making some really significant announcements with CEPI, with a number of international agencies over the last couple of months. Can you talk a bit about that, both in terms of what the mRNA hub does, but also your vision and your commitment to the partnership model?
So, Ben, mRNA is a future relevant technology. The versatility of the technology is unbelievable. So the WHO strategic decision in 2021 that the technology that they want to include in a hub and spoke model will be mRNA was very, very strategic. mRNA is platforms, multi-product, multi-purpose, crop protection, veterinary health, human health, diverse. And 60 years after the discussion of messenger RNA, really is RNA demonstrating its future value for pandemic preparedness, pandemic response, but for public health. So I'm intrigued. Some people say that I'm married to RNA. I'm intrigued what that technology can do. So in the early days of the mRNA tech transfer program, we were promised the technology. But in the midst of COVID, and let's not judge the decisions, no one could transfer technology to Afrigen. And that point in September, when it became end of September, beginning October 2021, when it became really clear that we're not going to get a tech transfer. At that time, this program could have ended. WHO could have said, "Oh, this is not going to work," and we could have blamed the rest of our lives, blame Big Pharma for not sharing. But it was a pivotal point where the partners in the program decided, then we're going to go solo. And again, the investments that South African government has made over many years in the research and development, the academic institutions, demonstrated the ability for us then to work with WITS. This is a partnership, public-private academic partnership, to fast-track the knowledge transfer to Afrigen for mRNA technology. The second thing is, at that point, it was not about a product anymore. It wasn't about a COVID-19 vaccine. We wouldn't have made it. It will take years. It was about build a platform, build the access, validate the platform, create a platform for innovation, better thermostability, new products, lower cost of goods, something which is suitable and appropriate for low and middle income countries, and to get that to our partners. And that's the heart of the program.
Yeah.
It became an R&D innovation program that will make mRNA innovation accessible.
Now, there's a lot to unpack from what you've said. The first up around you've spoken about the mRNA platform, and a lot of this research comes out of the investments, some might say failed investments, in an HIV or an AIDS vaccine over the years. But essentially, it's precisely that, a platform in which you can then target vaccines, specific vaccines that you're looking at, or even therapeutics. And you've been looking at how to address perhaps the biggest challenge that existed with the existing mRNA vaccines for COVID-19, which was the temperature. You called it thermal stability. Basically, these vaccines had to be stored at extremely low temperatures, which was a challenge, frankly, in many parts of the industrialized world. So how are you going on that front?
So I think because we're so driven to be appropriate for where we want to make impact, very early in the program. In fact, when we had the first 3 months lab work and we had the first neutralizing antibody data, and it was great. At that point already, the team started to innovate. So, but this we have the opportunity now to change this. The scientists in Afrigen, let me tell you a little bit about them, because that is that is what really matters. The average age of Afrigen is 34. It's a young company. So what does it tell you? It's the nimbleness, the energy, the inquisitiveness, the need to know and to understand made them dive deep. But they don't have experience. And it's one of the major things in the last 2 years, when we took a company from 22 people to 147 people, young people. So those people wanted to do better. They wanted to do science with a purpose. They want to address thermostability. So from beginning, we wanted to change some of the things that we know Big Pharma is working on, but we don't have access to that. But we know it's important for the communities and the last mile we're driving. So how do we do it? Partnerships. We're a small company. We're a boutique. We had to partner, and the partnerships that we've set out with the UK, with South Korea, with the US we call it our rainbow. There's five key challenges in mRNA to do what we really wanted to do and make it a public health intervention that will last. Pipeline, as many products as possible. Can we build a platform that you can use for parasitic, respiratory virus, systemic virus, and bacterial innovations? Secondly, thermostability. Can we work with partners that has novel LNPs, lipid nanoparticles, has novel encapsulation technologies, because Afrigen strengthens in formulation capabilities. We were an adjuvant lab. Thirdly, DNA and RNA. Can we work on the potency? Can we get freedom to operate around the UTRs that's been patented so strong patent protection? Fourthly, cost of goods. Can we work with partners that looks at continuous manufacturing processes that will reduce manufacturing time, will reduce the need for analytics, advanced analytics to ensure that you don't have impurities? Can we bring the cost down and the speed for manufacturing? Can we do synthetic DNA? Our partnership with Syngoy, which CEPI has funded. So CEPI for us in the early days was a vision. We wanted to demonstrate that we can build a platform, we can build a facility, we can build the processes that will give CEPI the confidence that we can join their networks and partner with them. It was one of the visions and one of the dreams we had in the beginning of this program.
So Petro, I mean, it is wonderful to hear this. It's like music to my heart to hear that we can do this. But the criticism might be, these are wonderful words, but look at the manufacturers of mRNA vaccines to date. Look at the size of them. They are thousands and thousands of people with massive investments. Is there not a risk? I got to ask it this way, but is there not a risk that you're setting yourself up for failure? You're creating such a sense of what could be done, but really we need the massive private sector entities to make it happen.
So there is a risk, but life without risk would be very boring. There is a risk, but it's a little bit, and I said it to my team, it's a little bit of the dream. And driving at night, you can only see as far as your headlights are shining, but you can go all the way. But what we have to make absolutely sure is that what we build at Afrigen is an asset. It has a commercial drive. We take on a product. Rift Valley fever. Please don't do it if you want to make money. Yeah. Do it if you want to make a difference. It's one of the high priority pathogens. Do that. But gonorrhea in AMR is a very important component. It's a very, very important global opportunity. So with the partnership with the Vaccine, do you know how significant it was for us 2 weeks ago to make the announcement with the Vaccine that we have proof of concept preclinically for a gonorrhea vaccine, an mRNA gonorrhea vaccine? We know the road is still 3 years from now. We know we have a validated animal model. We know we have validated human challenge models, but we have to go all the way to registration. But that one product can change the whole life of Afrigen. So we have a balance between what is the commercial portfolio and what is the portfolio that really shouldn't ask for money and should be royalty free. We will transfer the Rift Valley fever to our partners royalty free. Not high royalty, but for gonorrhea and for some of the other products, that's a different world. So it's the balance.
It is, and I can picture a scenario. Take a gonorrhea vaccine as an example, where there is a clear unmet medical need around the world, and the shared vision of African creativity, particularly this concept of South African leverage of different expertise. And you spoke about Wits University, and you spoke about other actors in South Africa who are sort of sharing the approaches, but bringing that to the global stage. And wouldn't it be interesting if we were talking about south to north tech transfer?
A dream.
A dream.
A possible dream. A very possible dream. Once we have fully embedded and validated the platform, and it is true, we need funding. We need to have funding that will sustain the research and development work that we're doing. And that is a continuous work. This is daily. My team in the last 2 weeks have probably done 5 proposals for funding to continue the development work and to transfer that to our partners, because remember, this platform is a partnership platform with the Medicines Patent Pool and the WHO to share the technology. Non-exclusively, but yes. There is no reason that some of the innovation that's happening at Afrigen with our partners will not be needed by the global north. We're not arrogant, but why not?
Totally. It does beg the question. You weren't able, and Medicines Patent Pool weren't able to secure the technology from northern innovators. Can you talk a bit about that? Why was that? What were their hesitancies, and how do you make sure that you are continuing to be at the table when they are having conversations with the WHO and others around access?
Why didn't it happen? There are many reasons. And there was a time when I was a little bitter. Well, maybe bitter is the wrong word. I was disappointed. I thought in a time when the world is in a global emergency, at the time when vaccines makes a difference to people not being hospitalized and die due to a disease that you can protect them against, and there's no vaccines. And it was a very emotional time for many people in the world. But rationally, again, my dad, you must look at the other side. Seek to understand before you shout to be understood. Was why would they not share the technology? Firstly, it was a difficult time in the world. Governments made first priority their own people, and that's nationalism and hoarding, and it will happen again. First responsibility. Secondly, there were just not enough capacity in the early days to produce vaccines for everyone, and therefore, where vaccines are produced matters, and we must talk about the initiative to have local manufacturing in a responsible, sustainable manner. And then mRNA technology, that's very future relevant and very valuable and complex. To transfer that technology to a biotech startup that is still building their facilities is a difficult thing. And therefore, and if I can say, what we're now doing in working with MPP and WHO, we will transfer our technology in a careful, stage way, which is unprecedented. As our partners get ready to onboard the technology at different scales, we will transfer and build that in a long-term vision. It's not a single tech transfer. So I understood in many ways why it was very difficult for Big Pharma to partner with that technology and transfer to us. Today I'm glad it never happened. Because if it had happened at that time, we would be confined and constricted to one product, a COVID-19 product, and not have the opportunity to build a platform for sustainability. It would have been a moment in time, and when the pandemic was over, the rights to a COVID-19 vaccine would be of no value. So I think it was destiny that didn't happen.
And local vaccine manufacturing capacity is clearly very important, because we learned from COVID that if you can't produce it, you'll get right at the back of the queue, and the countries that can produce it hoard it. Or another way of looking at it is to say that they put their own national population above the global good. But what's interesting about what you're saying is that it's not just manufacturing capacity. This is your destiny moment, in a sense. It's you then embarking on the R&D journey itself. and creating and hopefully getting appropriate IP, but clearly a strategy to share and bring partners along as you go. That perhaps is more important, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's what drives us. We will transfer our technology to 5 African countries. So let's talk about Africa. Yes, this is a continent that really, again, HIV, Ebola, influenza, were not able to access essential vaccines because we have 1% of the capability to manufacture the vaccines we need. But there's something more to it. One of the key determinants of health is poverty. For me, local manufacturing, and I've worked since 1998 on a few models, is about industrialization. It is about economic development. The multiplier of the manufacturing sector is vast. Therefore, for us to turn a continent around, for me, local manufacturing, vaccines, diagnostics, therapeutics, is essential. Create the jobs. 1.4 billion people, fastest growing population. 1 in 4 people in 2030 or 2035 will be African. The average age, 19 years. We have to industrialize this continent. That is part of the ultimate end goal. And manufacturing is one way to do that. Building those quality jobs.
Yeah, amen to that, because that is concretely building sustainability. Yeah, and growth. Oh, Petro, we have reached the top of the hour. There are a whole lot of things that we didn't cover that I would love to do so. I hope this is just perhaps an introduction podcast and that we can invite you back as things progress with Afrigen. Is there anything that we've missed? Anything that you think it's important for our listeners and viewers to know as you embark on, further extensive international travel, getting yourself seats at the table where decisions are made?
First, maybe just to say to you, thank you for giving us a voice. It will be very easy for this little company and this initiative, which is more than what the company is about, to disappear in midair if we don't build the partnerships. We do not make sure that the end-to-end research, development, and manufacturing capability that we've built is not sustainable. And therefore, we will continue to build the partnerships, to innovate, build the assets, and share that with the continent and with our partners to ensure that mRNA really, truly finds its place in the public health domain while we create pandemic preparedness. We cannot divorce the two from each other. The world cannot just build pandemic preparedness. The world has to build product delivery for a public health system for better health while we ensure we are pandemically prepared. So in terms of equity and access, we're an access program. And we, in our hearts, we drive for equity. But we need all the partners, whole of society, to work together to reach health equity.
Dr. Petro Terblanche, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Ben.
Wow. Well, that's it for this episode. I think, as you can see, Petro has really sung to some issues that have been really important in the work that I've done throughout my career, and which I think are central to the mission of a Shot in the Arm podcast. So, yeah, hope you've enjoyed this episode. A big thank you to Erica Spera, our director and producer from NewsDoc Media. Special thanks to Aisha Raphael, our assistant producer, and a big thanks to you. Don't forget to subscribe and like us wherever you get your podcast platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube, by the way. We're trying to grow our YouTube channel. And finally, have a great week and a safe week, everyone.